You're sitting at your desk, staring at an email invitation to a social event you don't want to attend. Your finger hovers over the accept button. You feel that familiar knot in your stomach, the one that forms when you're about to say yes to something that doesn't align with who you are or what you truly want. Sound familiar? We've all been there. In a world constantly pulling us in different directions, learning to say no isn't just a skill, it's an art that's essential for living a life true to ourselves and our values. But why is it so hard? And more importantly, how can we get better at it? Today, we're diving deep into the Stoic approach to saying no to things that don't align with our values. Now, don't worry if you're not familiar with Stoicism. By the end of this video, you'll have a practical toolkit for making decisions that truly reflect who you are and what you stand for. Let's start with a simple question. What are values? Think of them as your personal North Star, the principles that guide your decisions and shape your character. They're not just abstract concepts, but the backbone of who you are. Maybe for you, it's honesty, or creativity, or family. Whatever they are, your values are uniquely yours. But here's the thing. Losing sight of these values in our hyper-connected world is easy. We're bombarded with expectations, social pressures, and endless opportunities. It's like being in a crowded marketplace where everyone's shouting for your attention. In this chaos, saying yes often feels easier than saying no. This is where Stoicism comes in. Now, don't let the name intimidate you. Stoicism isn't about being emotionless or enduring hardship without complaint. It's a practical philosophy that teaches us how to live well by focusing on what we can control and letting go of what we can't. The ancient Stoics like Marcus Aurelius and Epictetus understood something profound. True freedom comes from aligning our actions with our values. They believed that by saying no to things that don't serve our purpose, we say yes to a life of integrity and inner peace. Think about it. How often have you agreed to something and immediately regretted it? Maybe it was a project at work that went against your ethics or a social commitment that drained your energy. Each time we say yes to something that doesn't align with our values, we chip away at our sense of self. But here's the good news. Every no is an opportunity to reaffirm who you are and what you stand for. It's a chance to practice what the Stoics called the dichotomy of control, focusing on what we can influence and accepting what we can't. Let's break this down with a real-life example. Imagine you're Sarah, a graphic designer. You're offered a high-paying job to create marketing materials for a company whose practices you find unethical. The money would solve many financial worries, and your friends and family are urging you to take it. It's just a job, they say. You can't afford to be picky in this economy. This is where the rubber meets the road. On one side, you have external pressures and the allure of financial security. On the other, you have your values, your integrity, and belief in ethical business practices. What do you do? A Stoic approach would encourage Sarah to look inward. What matters more, short-term gain or long-term peace of mind? Sarah isn't just turning down money by saying no to this job. She's saying yes to her principles. She's choosing to control the one thing she truly can, her own choices and actions. You might think, that's all well and good, but saying no isn't easy. And you're right. Standing firm in your values takes courage, especially when faced with pressure or tempting opportunities. But remember, courage isn't the absence of fear. It's action in the face of fear. The Stoics understood this. They knew living according to your values often means swimming against the current. But they also knew that this struggle is what gives life meaning. As Marcus Aurelius said, "You have power over your mind, not outside events. Realize this, and you will find strength." So, how do we cultivate this strength? How do we learn to say no without feeling guilty or afraid? It starts with clarity. Get clear on what truly matters to you. Take a moment right now to think. What are your non-negotiables? What principles would you stand by, even if it cost you something? Once you have this clarity, the next step is practice. Like any skill, saying no gets easier with time. Start small. The next time you're invited to an event you don't want to attend, politely decline. When asked to take on a task that doesn't align with your priorities, respectfully explain why you can't. Remember, saying no doesn't have to mean conflict. It can be done with grace and respect. A simple "thank you for thinking of me, but I have to decline" is often enough. You don't owe anyone a lengthy explanation for honoring your values. As you practice, you'll notice something interesting happening. Each time you say no to something that doesn't align with your values, you create space for things that do. It's like decluttering your life, removing what doesn't serve you to make room for what does. This is where the concept of essentialism comes in, a modern philosophy that echoes many Stoic principles. Essentialism teaches us to distinguish between what's truly important and what's just noise. By saying no to the non-essential, we free up our time, energy, and resources for what truly matters. Think of it this way: every yes is a trade-off. When you say yes to one thing, you inevitably say no to something else. The question is, are you making that trade-off consciously? Are you saying yes to what aligns with your values? Or are you letting others dictate your choices? Now, I can almost hear some of you thinking, but what about compromise? Isn't life about give and take? Absolutely. The Stoics weren't advocating for a rigid, inflexible approach to life. They understood the importance of social connections and civic duty. The key is to distinguish between necessary compromises and unnecessary concessions. Imagine you're Alex, a parent juggling a demanding career and family life. Your boss asks you to take on a project requiring working late for the next month, missing your child's soccer games. On the surface, it might seem like an apparent conflict between work and family values. But let's dig deeper. Let's return to Alex's dilemma. The Stoic approach here isn't about making a black and white choice between work and family. It's about finding a solution that honors both values: professional responsibility and family commitment. Alex might negotiate a flexible schedule, propose working from home some days, or find ways to involve the family in the decision-making process. This is where the Stoic principle of preferred indifference comes into play. The Stoics believed that while we should prefer certain outcomes, we shouldn't be overly attached to them. In Alex's case, the preferred outcome might be balancing work and family perfectly. But if that's not possible, the focus shifts to how to respond virtuously to the situation. Alex may take on the project, but find creative ways to stay connected with the family during this busy period. Or perhaps Alex declines the project, but proposes an alternative that meets the company's needs without sacrificing family time. The key is deciding that Alex can stand behind with integrity, regardless of the outcome. This brings us to an important point. Saying no isn't about avoiding difficulty or seeking an easy life. Sometimes saying no is the more challenging choice. It might mean turning down a promotion to stay true to your values, or ending a relationship that doesn't align with your life goals. The Stoics would argue that these difficult no's are often the most important ones. Think about a time when you said no to something that was tempting but didn't align with your values. How did it feel at the moment? Probably a bit uncomfortable, right? But how did it feel afterwards? Often there's a sense of relief, of lightness. That's the feeling of being in alignment with your true self. Now, let's address the elephant in the room. Fear. Fear of missing out. Fear of disappointing others. Fear of consequences. These fears often drive us to say yes when we should say no. The Stoics had a lot to say about fear. Seneca, one of the great Stoic philosophers, wrote, "We suffer more often in imagination than in reality." What Seneca meant is that our fears are often exaggerated. We imagine worst-case scenarios that rarely come to pass. The next time you're afraid to say no, ask yourself, what's the worst that could happen? And how likely is it really? Often you'll find that the consequences of saying are far less severe than you imagined. Let's look at a practical example. Imagine you're Jamie, a college student. Your friends are pressuring you to go out drinking the night before an important exam. You want to study, but you're afraid of being left out or labeled as boring. The fear of social rejection is pushing you towards a yes. A Stoic approach would encourage Jamie to examine this fear. Is one night of socializing worth compromising academic goals? Will true friends reject you for prioritizing your studies? By facing these fears head-on, Jamie can make a decision based on values rather than fleeting emotions. This doesn't mean the decision will be easy. Saying no to peer pressure is challenging at any age. But remember, every time you say no to something that doesn't align with your values, you're saying yes to your authentic self. You're building a track record of integrity that will serve you well throughout life. Now, let's talk about a common pitfall, the guilt trip. Whether from family, friends, or colleagues, we've all experienced the subtle or not so subtle pressure to say yes out of guilt. But we always spend holidays together, a relative might say, or everyone else on the team is willing to work weekends, a boss might imply. The Stoic response to guilt trips is simple but powerful. You are responsible for your actions and choices, not for others' emotions or expectations. This doesn't mean being insensitive or inconsiderate. It means recognizing that while you can control your behavior, you can't control how others react to it. Let's revisit our earlier example with Sarah, the graphic designer who turned down the unethical job. She might face guilt trips from family members worried about her financial stability. A Stoic approach would be acknowledging their concerns, explaining her reasoning clearly, and then letting go of the outcome. Sarah can't control whether her family understands or approves of her decision, but she can control her actions and responses. This brings us to another crucial aspect of saying no: communication. The art of saying no isn't just about the refusal itself. It's about how you convey it. Clear, respectful communication can often soften the blow of a no and even strengthen relationships in the long run. Here are some practical tips for communicating your no. 1. Be clear and direct. Ambiguity can lead to misunderstandings and false hopes. 2. Express appreciation. Thank the person for thinking of you or for the opportunity. 3. Explain briefly if appropriate, but don't over-explain or make excuses. 4. Offer an alternative if possible, but only if it aligns with your values and capacity. 5. Stand firm. If pressured, calmly restate your position without becoming defensive. Remember, you're not responsible for managing others' disappointment. Your job is to communicate your decision clearly and respectfully. Now, let's address a common concern. Won't saying no limit our opportunities? Won't we miss out on experiences or connections? This is where the Stoic concept of negative visualization can be helpful. This doesn't mean being pessimistic, but imagining what life would be like if you said yes to everything. Imagine a life where every moment is filled with commitments you didn't really want to make, where your time and energy are constantly drained by activities that don't align with your values. Doesn't sound very fulfilling, does it? By saying no to what doesn't serve us, we create space for opportunities that truly matter. Think of it like tending a garden. If you let every plant grow unchecked, you'll end up with a tangled mess where nothing thrives. But by carefully pruning, saying no to what doesn't belong, you create space for the plants you want to nurture. Your life is that garden. What do you want to grow in it? This brings us to an important point. Saying no isn't just about avoiding what you don't want. It's about making room for what you do want. It's about creating a life that reflects your values and aspirations. Every no to something that doesn't align with your values is a yes to your authentic self. Let's explore this with another example. Meet Abid, a software engineer who loves his job but feels a deep calling to teach. He's been offered a job promotion that would mean more money and prestige, but also longer hours and more stress. At the same time, he can volunteer to teach coding to underprivileged kids on weekends. The promotion is tempting. It's what Abid is supposed to want: more money, a bigger title. But deep down, it doesn't align with his values of work-life balance and giving back to the community. The Stoic approach would encourage Abid to look beyond the surface-level benefits and consider what truly fulfills him. Abid isn't limiting himself by saying no to the promotion and yes to the teaching opportunity. He's aligning his life with his values. He's creating space for what truly matters to him. And in doing so, he's likely to find more satisfaction and purpose than any promotion could provide. This doesn't mean the decision is easy. Abid might face questioning from colleagues or family who don't understand why he's turning down a great opportunity. This is where another Stoic principle comes in handy, focusing on what's within our control. Abid can't control others' opinions of his choice. What he can control is his actions and responses. He can explain his decision calmly and confidently without feeling the need to justify himself. He can remind himself that he's acting in accordance with his values and find peace in that knowledge. Now, let's address another common concern: the fear of damaging relationships by saying no. Many of us say yes to preserve harmony, especially with family and close friends. But consider this: is a relationship healthy if it requires you to compromise your values constantly? The Stoics believed in the importance of social connections, but emphasized the need for authenticity in these relationships. By consistently saying yes when you want to say no, you're not just betraying yourself, you're preventing others from knowing and understanding your true self. Let's look at an example. Maya is an introvert who values her alone time, but her extroverted best friend, Liam, always invites her to social events. Maya often says yes out of fear of hurting Liam's feelings or damaging their friendship. But over time, she finds herself feeling drained and resentful. A Stoic approach would encourage Maya to have an honest conversation with Liam. By explaining her need for alone time and setting boundaries, Maya isn't rejecting Liam. She's inviting him to know her more authentically. This honesty might initially cause some friction, but it lays the groundwork for a deeper, more genuine friendship. Remember, true friends and healthy relationships in general should respect your values and boundaries. If saying no damages a relationship, it's worth considering whether that relationship was serving you well in the first place. As we near the end of our exploration, let's touch on one more crucial aspect of saying no: self-compassion. Learning to align your actions with your values is a journey, not a destination. There will be times when you say yes when you should have said no, or when saying no feels incredibly difficult. The Stoics emphasized the importance of self-reflection, but not self-flagellation. If you find yourself in a situation where you've compromised your values, don't beat yourself up. Instead, view it as a learning opportunity. What can this experience teach you about your values and boundaries? How can you approach similar situations differently in the future? Let's dive deeper into self-compassion and learning from our experiences. Imagine you're Chris, a recent college graduate starting your first job. You're eager to impress and afraid of being seen as problematic. So you say yes to every request, even when it means working late into the night or taking on tasks you're not comfortable with. After a few months, you're exhausted, stressed, and feeling disconnected from your values. This is a crucial moment. The easy path would be to blame yourself for not setting boundaries earlier. But the Stoic approach and the path of self-compassion is different. Instead of harsh self-criticism, ask yourself, what can I learn from this? Perhaps you've gained clarity about your limits and the importance of work-life balance. Maybe you've realized that your fear of being seen as difficult was overblown. These insights are valuable. They're not failures, but stepping stones on your journey to living more authentically. Remember, the goal isn't perfection. The Stoics understood that life is a constant process of growth and refinement. Marcus Aurelius, the philosopher emperor, wrote in his personal journal, "You could leave life right now. Let that determine what you do and say and think." This isn't meant to be morbid, but to remind us to live intentionally, in alignment with our values, every day. How do we put all of this into practice? How do we cultivate the strength to say no consistently and confidently? Here are some practical strategies rooted in Stoic wisdom. 1. Regular self-reflection. Take time each day to reflect on your choices. Did your actions align with your values? Where did you say yes when you wanted to say no? This isn't about judgment, but about building self-awareness. 2. Practice negative visualization. Regularly imagine what your life would be like if you always said yes. This can strengthen your resolve to say no when it matters. 3. Start small. Begin with low-stakes situations. Say no to a minor request that doesn't align with your values. As you build confidence, you can tackle more challenging scenarios. 4. Prepare your responses. Have a few polite but firm phrases ready when you need to say no. This can help you respond confidently in the moment. 5. Seek support. Surround yourself with people who respect your values and boundaries. Their support can bolster your courage when saying no is difficult. 6. Practice empathy. Remember that when you say no, you're not just honoring your values, but also allowing others to respect those values. Let's see how these strategies play out in real life. Meet Elena, a marketing manager who values creativity and ethical business practices. She's been asked to work on a campaign for a product she believes is misleading to consumers. This is a challenging situation. Saying no could have professional consequences, but saying yes would compromise her integrity. Elena decides to approach this stoically. First, she reflects on her values and the potential outcomes of her decision. She visualizes both scenarios, the discomfort of saying no and the long-term dissatisfaction of compromising her ethics. Next, she prepares her response, focusing on clear professional communication. She might say, "I appreciate you considering me for this project. However, I have concerns about the product claims that conflict with my professional ethics. I would be happy to discuss alternative approaches that align with both our goals and ethical marketing practices." Elena also seeks support, discussing the situation with a trusted mentor. This helps her gain perspective and reinforces her commitment to her values. By following these steps, Elena is not just saying no to a single project. She's saying yes to her integrity, potentially setting a positive example for her colleagues and possibly initiating a valuable conversation about ethical practices in her company. Now let's address another crucial aspect of saying no: the fear of missed opportunities. In our fast-paced world, There's constant pressure to seize every chance and do more. But the Stoics understood something profound. Sometimes, less is more. Consider the ancient Stoic practice of voluntary discomfort. This involved intentionally preceding comfort or pleasure to build resilience and clarity of mind. In our context, we can think of saying no as a form of voluntary discomfort. Yes, it might be uncomfortable at the moment. Yes, you might wonder if you're missing out. But through this discomfort, you gain something invaluable: alignment with your true self. Let's explore this with another example. Meet Jamal, a talented musician who's been offered a spot in a popular band. The opportunity promises fame and fortune, everything Jamal thought he wanted. However, the band's style and values don't align with Jamal's artistic vision. The fear of missing out is intense. What if this is his only shot at success? But as Jamal reflects on his values, he realizes that his definition of success isn't about fame or money. It's about creating music that's true to his artistic vision. By saying no to the band, Jamal isn't just turning down an opportunity. He's creating space for opportunities that align with his values. He's saying yes to his authentic artistic expression. This brings us to an important point. Saying no isn't about limitation but curation. Think of your life as a museum. Every yes is like adding an exhibit. If you say yes to everything, your museum becomes cluttered, unfocused, and overwhelming. But by carefully curating, by saying no to what doesn't fit, you create a clear, powerful representation of your values and aspirations. Let's address a common misconception. Saying no means being inflexible or closed-minded. The Stoics weren't advocating for rigid thinking or isolation from the world. They emphasized the importance of being an engaged citizen and continual learning. The key is distinguishing between openness to new ideas and experiences and compromising your core values. It's about being flexible in your methods, but firm in your principles. Let's illustrate this with an example. Meet Aisha, an environmental scientist who values sustainability. She's invited to collaborate on a project with a company known for its poor environmental practices. Her initial instinct is to say no outright. But Aisha decides to take a more nuanced approach. Instead of refusing immediately, she engages in a dialogue. She explains her concerns and explores whether there's an opportunity to influence the company's practices positively. She's open to collaboration, but only if it aligns with her core value of sustainability. This approach, being open to dialogue while staying true to your values, can often lead to unexpected positive outcomes. Maybe Aisha's input leads to more sustainable practices within the company, or maybe the conversation helps Aisha refine and strengthen her own views. The Stoic philosopher Epictetus said, "It's not what happens to you, but how you react to it that matters." By approaching challenging situations with openness and integrity, we can turn potential conflicts into opportunities for growth and positive change. As we near the end of our exploration, let's touch on one more crucial point: the power of saying yes. It might seem strange to talk about saying yes in a discussion about saying no, but the two are intimately connected. Whenever you say no to something that doesn't align with your values, you create space to say yes to something that does. This is where the true power of no lies, not in rejection, but in affirmation. Think about the last time you said no to something that didn't serve you. How did it feel? Probably a mix of emotions, perhaps some anxiety or doubt, but also a sense of relief, of lightness. That feeling of lightness is your value, breathing a sigh of relief. It's your authentic self saying, "Thank you." As we wrap up our journey through the Stoic approach to saying no, let's take a moment to reflect on the bigger picture. We've explored how saying no to things that don't align with our values isn't just about refusal. It's about affirmation. Affirmation of who we are, what we stand for, and the life we want to create. Remember, Every no is also a yes. When you say no to excessive overtime, you're saying yes to work-life balance. When you say no to peer pressure, you're saying yes to your judgment and well-being. When you say no to opportunities that don't resonate with your core values, you're saying yes to authenticity and personal growth. The Stoics understood that true freedom doesn't come from having unlimited choices, but from making choices aligned with our deepest values. In a world that often equates success with constant yes, the ability to say no becomes a superpower. It's the tool that allows you to sculpt your life according to your design, rather than letting external pressures and expectations shape it. But let's be honest, this isn't always easy. There will be times when saying no feels impossible. Times when the pressure to conform, to please others, or to seize every opportunity feels overwhelming. In these moments, remember the words of Epictetus. He is a wise man who does not grieve for the things which he has not, but rejoices for those which he has. This simple shift in perspective, from focusing on what you might be missing out on to appreciating what you're gaining, can make all the difference. When you're tempted to say yes to something that doesn't align with your values, pause, take a breath, ask yourself, what am I saying yes to by saying no to this? As we conclude, I want to leave you with a challenge. Over the next week, practice mindful no's. Each day, try to identify one thing, big or small, that doesn't align with your values. It could be a social invitation you don't really want to accept, a task at work that's not your responsibility, or even a negative thought pattern you've been holding on to. For each of these, practice saying no. It doesn't have to be out loud. Even a mental no can be powerful. As you do this, pay attention to how it feels. Notice the initial discomfort and the sense of alignment that follows. Remember, this isn't about becoming a no person. It's about becoming a person who says yes intentionally, authentically, and in alignment with their true self. It's about creating a life that reflects your values, not someone else's expectations. In the words of Marcus Aurelius, very little is needed to make a happy life. It is all within yourself, in your way of thinking. By learning to say no to what doesn't serve us, we make room for what truly matters. We create space for joy, growth, and genuine fulfillment. So the next time you find yourself about to say yes out of habit, fear, or obligation, pause. Take a moment to check in with your values. Ask yourself, is this a yes that honors who I am and who I want to be? If not, have the courage to say no. Remember, it's not just a refusal. It's an affirmation of your authentic self. As we end this journey together, I want to leave you with one final thought. The ability to say no is more than just a skill. It's a practice. Like any practice, it gets easier with time. There will be stumbles along the way, moments of doubt, perhaps even regret. But each no is a step towards a more authentic, purposeful life. So go forth with courage. Say no to what doesn't serve you, so you can say yes to what truly matters. Your future self will thank you for it. Thank you for joining me on this exploration of the Stoic art of saying no. Remember, every day is a new opportunity to align your actions with your values. Every moment is a chance to say yes to your authentic self. The power is in your hands. Use it wisely